Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Aquarius. A solution. We're actually streaming on both today because do you know that since I haven't paid for Twitter on my credit card, it gives me the blue tick. And now lately, if you haven't paid for Twitter, you can't stream on Twitter. Right. And that I just discovered like a day ago. Usually I'm on Twitter as well. So instead of being on Twitter, I'm now on Solutions and Aquarius Rising Africa. So yay, it's wonderful to see you again and welcome everybody in the chat. Always love seeing your beautiful faces there. Hello, Catherine. How are you?
I've been good. I didn't know that back Twitter. I don't pay for any blue ticks or anything, so I didn't know. And I always thought my lives were being streamed to Twitter, but then actually I've never checked, so they're obviously not. Show someone.
No, mine was always live streaming onto Twitter as well. So now it's not, but yeah, I'm still thinking whether I should go that route or not. Gosh, so many decisions in this white collar world that we find ourselves in. Right.
Looking at I haven't looked into the X and things. I mean, the admin behind just putting shows on and putting them together and everything, because I keep meaning to do a Substack because I want some sort of platform where I can do some extra stuff that I can't say on other platforms, but then also brings in some revenue, because it's a lot of work doing a lot of research on some of the things we dive deep into. But yeah, there's not enough hours. I need a really good assistant. If there's anyone out there. But yeah, there's a lot. And the goalposts keep. I have noticed that YouTube are getting very strict on the censorship. They took one of my contents off for something I did 8 months ago, and then I've noticed.
What content was that though?
It was all on the natural health stuff. So this was on some stuff on holistic.
They don't like that, hey? I tell you, one thing I've realized is anything to do with natural medicine or natural healing, they don't mind us having conversations. They don't strike like, let's say, conversations, but the minute you start promoting something, I mean, I'm surprised nothing has happened with my Spooky 2 stuff yet, but I had one show that was struck on Spooky 2, but the guy that I did the show with, the Dr. Bill McGraw was his name. Brilliant man. Wow. But he'd had his channel struck by them previously. So I think he was the red flag. But yeah, they don't like anything like that. Anything natural, anything that doesn't require big farmers' input. They come down on, I mean, and when we look at stuff like this, Catherine, do we really think that the good guys are in control? They're not. They're really, really not. We're still in this battle that we are in, and we're still having to watch our backs and our corners, all four corners of the globe, if you're a flat earth believer, or all around you. If you're a round earth believer.
That song used to be right round, baby, right round. I won't demonstrate.
Yeah.
Always one of my favourites, especially after a few drinks. But I think it's very interesting because
I love the way you add after a few drinks, because that's the key.
It is the key, and yeah, I did. Someone once said when they saw me dancing to that, I looked like Sad Mario Warrior, but there was a lot of energy that went into that dance, and I enjoyed myself. But really interesting in terms of I find that I've been putting out content. I mean, I'm on my 3rd YouTube channel now. I know you all this, but when you put out the content about that's really helping people, just even some really simple things, one, they get shadow banned, they don't get pushed out to people, and secondly, they're the most likely ones to be sort of taken off, and it is quite interesting. So I am going to have to at some stage take a week off and look into some of these other things and decide where I can put some of this stuff, because we've got to, I know we're talking about something completely differently today, but I think, all of these things, they all link in, they're all interconnected. And the more we empower ourselves with the knowledge and the more choices we give ourselves, then the better, really.
Catherine, you're so funny. I agree. That comment has me giggling. That's very British. That's very dry humor, by the way.
Yeah, I'd say it's very dry. I was actually with my best friend I've known since I was 4, and we don't see each other much, but it was such a pleasure to see her yesterday, because when you meet people in this world of political correctness, when you meet people to laugh with that don't take offense, it's so rare now, isn't it? To be able to have a laugh
Absolutely.
without taking offense, and you can have some nice gentle teasing that's not nasty or vindictive.
You know, we got to realize that laughter is God's medicine. You know, the more we realize that, the better. Do you know that some of my greatest successes in my therapies have come from literally sometimes forcing my clients to stand in front of the mirror and laugh at themselves? When you have that crap thought in your head that keeps going round and round and round and drives you to ugly crying and stuff like that, in that moment, go and stand in front of the mirror and laugh at yourself. And not in a, again, not in a vindictive, nasty way, but just go, oh my God, it breaks something, you know. And the more of us that get together and we actually see the humor in things, you know, a lot of people have been under a lot of criticism because I laugh. It's like, and it's not because I don't think it's serious. I'm like, the ridiculousness that some people go to, it's like, I cannot imagine. I've got a visual mind, right? I cannot imagine, and I visualize this particular thing that I might be seeing in my head, you know, play itself out in front of me. I laugh because I see the humor in that, although it could be very serious. But if we're going to also just keep giving the serious, heavy, oh, this is such a tough time, and not see the good bits. We have to be able to see the good bits. We have to be able to see the light, because it's exactly that heals the dark, right? Or that lights up the dark. So laughter truly is God's medicine. And it is, I mean, you know, when you hear somebody laugh that's got a contagious laugh, there is just nothing that can stop you from laughing. How good do you feel after you've rolled around the floor, tears streaming out of your eyes, and just about peed in your pants because you've laughed so much? Never have I ever heard anyone say, oh, I feel dreadful, I've been laughing too much. Yes, my cheek sometimes gets sore, my stomach muscles for sure, but the euphoria that one feels through laughter is amazing. It's so healing, right?
Oh, it's fantastic. I liken it a bit to, like, we talked quite a lot in the past about when animals releasing trauma, they shake themselves off. And yes, we can do. I'm really pleased to see sort of some somatic healing techniques really sort of coming to the fore again, which is really important. But you know, to me is one of those. It's almost a somatic healing technique as well, and it's really important to be able to laugh at yourself in a kind way, because it can reset your energy field so quickly. And if we look at like energy, the spiral of energies of, you know, you've got the ones with the highest frequencies, and I've noticed now that they're saying authenticity is way higher than love, and then you've got the downward spirals of the negative emotions. I think it's a really, laughter is such a quick way to actually put yourself back on that upward spiral.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's essential, and especially in this day and age, you know, to watch funny, and it's quite relevant actually to what we're talking about, because, you know, part of trauma bonding, it's such a deep rooted, wounded experience for people that have suffered through. And actually all of us have had some form of trauma bonding, whether we actually acknowledge it or not. I think, and that's part of the reason I chose the topic today, because we have to also find tools to release the trauma bonding or to dissolve it, you know, and laughter is certainly one of them. And I can't tell you how often I say to my students and my clients, if I'm working with them, watch funny cat videos, watch something, watch a funny movie, you know, where you're going to be sitting giggling. And even if it's for, excuse me, 10 seconds that you just lose yourself in laughter and forget about your problems for that time, that's the breakthrough you need, right? It's so important to be able to find that balance. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Catherine, we are talking about trauma bonding today. And trauma bonding is so often misconstrued for love. Oh boy. Small wonder the average person on the planet right now thinks love is pain and pain is love. It's for most people, it's interchangeable. One is not mutually exclusive from the other. It's the same thing. And that's why most people, when they've been hurt in relationships, they say, well, love doesn't work for me, or love is not meant for me, or whatever. It's not love. Love is something very different to trauma bonded relationships. So I'd love to hear your view on what this is. And also what I'd love to hear in the chats, you guys that are in there, if you guys have any stories on trauma bonding, if you've been trauma bonded, if you are currently trauma bonded, if you have been, if you're out of it, how did you get out of it? If you care to share, it would be lovely to hear, because this is a topic right now, especially with all the SRA. I mean, if that's not trauma bonding, then God knows what is, right? So there's so much trauma bonding that has occurred in so many people's childhoods. Then are we surprised that, so I think, is it 40% of first marriages that fail? And I think 70% of second marriages. So it just shows you. But I think the statistic right now is that 40% of first marriages fail. And that would often be due to often leaving the house and just wanting to get away from the family or something like that, right? There's lots of reasons.
Yeah.
That's showing you people are not getting married for the right reasons. So half the planet, so to speak, is not getting married for the right reasons. What's your take on that?
Well, possibly. I don't necessarily think I think that can be the same thing, but I think there can be many other reasons for that. But for me, trauma bonding is all about, and I saw someone put it in the, about Stockholm syndrome, which is like
yes.
An extreme form of trauma bonding, whereas someone's
right.
Or that they become addicted to their abuser. But you can be attached to your abuser or stuck in a cycle of abuse, or stuck in a cycle of neglect. And that abuse can take all sorts of different forms. You can have the extreme forms of human trafficking, of sexual exploitation, of Stockholm syndrome, but there can be lots of variations of this trauma bonding, abusive parents, if you've got a parent alcoholic or a drug addict or anger issues or a sex
a parent's divorce can cause a child to trauma bond. It doesn't have to be necessarily something as extreme as human trafficking or being kidnapped or SRA'd or something, right? It's really it's about really just understanding. Yeah, I mean it's crazy, isn't it? When we're looking at the as you say the offspring of that. So there'll be your main ones, and then there's also lots of little things. As I say, divorce can cause a trauma bond. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in terms of, you also see it with animals as well. So you can see sort of particularly with dogs or animals that are dependent on a human for their survival, even if they're abused, can choose to stay because they've got no other choice, or because they're so psychologically connected to that animal, that human. I mean, I would say the classic example with animals would be the elephant in the circus. That the grown elephant has got the little rope and the little chain on to rip out, but because it had such a trauma bond to, they're dependent on the care and they couldn't escape as a little baby elephant calf, then that trauma bond stays with them, and therefore they don't try and. But I think with a lot of it, and I think linking it back to what you were saying at the start, Shanti, about people confusing love and pain, I see it all over social media at the moment. And I see it a lot with people when they're talking about their animals. Oh, I love you so much, it hurts. And it's very concerning to me because, again, love shouldn't be associated with the hurt like that. Yes, if you lose a loved one, you're going to go through the grief process, of course, but that's very different to saying I love someone that it hurts, and that's an unhealthy connection, in my opinion. And I think there's so much that comes out of it. And when people are looking at whether they're in a trauma bond, there's some real triggers that can really help them sort of think, is this a healthy relationship or not? And every relationship is going to have its ups and downs. There's no perfect, and every person in the relationship is going to have good days and bad days. But if you're constantly making, let's talk about, if you're talking about a romantic relationship as an example, if you're making excuses for their behavior all the time, and this can be any relationship, whether it's with a boss, whether it's with a parent, whether it's with a child, whether it's with a lover, if you're constantly making excuses for their behaviors or pretending certain things haven't happened, then that's a massive red flag that there's a trauma bond going on there. I mean, how often do you see that on people in these situations, Shanti?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Trauma bonding is really, I think, the same as the Stockholm Syndrome. It really is where a child, and that's why I think trauma bonding, we need to be talking about this more as something that is more core issue related. Psychology is wonderful in many ways, but very often it doesn't reach the root, right? Often we're getting medication and stuff like that to take away the symptoms, but it doesn't take away the cause. So when we're looking at, for example, and you will know if you're in a trauma bonded situation, you've been gaslit, right? One moment he's either violating you or abusing you and, kicking you out of the house or whatever the case might be. And the next minute he's love bombing you. So that cycle, it's a complete cycle that occurs. So you have that moment where, let's say, the drama occurs. And then and it's often, and I say he because it's mostly women that are in these situations. It doesn't mean that there's no one else or nothing else, but I'm just referring to the majority now. So it's like, and then, as I said, the love bombing will come next, the gifts, the promises, the flowers, the weekends away, all of these things, that really sort of just covers up those raw wounds. And then, of course, you as the partner get into the cycle of sitting and waiting it out until the next drama hits. And then the same thing occurs. And every time something like that occurs, your self-confidence just gets depleted more and more and more and more. So these type of behaviors then become the norm. It becomes normal for you, because now you're viewing the world through that lens of abuse, and then you learn that you have to be quiet. You can't backchat him. You can't have your opinion anymore. You can't work anymore. You can't continue your studies anymore, right? Because you now have to play small because somebody else cannot actually allow you to blossom and bloom in your environment. Now, that would often be a later result of trauma bonding if it's just in a normal type situation. But let's go back to the beginning, because these things don't just happen. Let's remember we are all products of very wounded parents. Not too long ago, the world wars were on. Good God, can you imagine what was happening there? And these are our parents and our grandparents that have gone through that. They're hardly emotionally flourishing, are they? Right? So we are kind of, we've all just had to take what we have and realize that we are so, it's codependency. Trauma bonding is codependency of the greatest degree, right? Of the first degree. So oftentimes it's going to come from an abusive parent. In SRA, trauma bonding is what they do with the kids. And I'm going to speak a little bit graphic here. So if there are kids in the room, maybe you can just tootle them out for a minute. But but really what happens, oftentimes what happens, I mean, one of my people I was working with in the recent past, from when she was in her mother's womb, they started torturing her mother. They would tie electric clamps on her nipples and on her fingers and on her toes, and they would shock her. So while she was pregnant, so that baby in the womb was already traumatized. All she knew was pain and fear. So for the first 18 months of her life, her mother was not present in her life. It was her father. Her father was the one that fed her, cared for her, nurtured her, changed her diapers, etc. She knew no one, and no one, there's no one else, maybe one or two others, but the father is there. That child becomes so attached to the father. And then at 18 months old was the first time he RAPED'd her. And so the trauma in that situation is so huge, and there's no one else the child can go to. And that's when they oftentimes will do the first split, like they'll split, DID. And then, of course, it becomes very confusing. And then the father, of course, then he'll give them sweeties and lollipops and put them on the lap and until the next time. So that becomes the cycle. It becomes a cycle of abuse and bliss. Abuse and bliss. And we have to figure out where in our lives we have that cycle of abuse and bliss that we can't get out of, because we all have it somewhere. And the first thing it just takes is for us to identify, right, what it is. Nowadays, Catherine, there's so much talk about narcissists, and people are just jabbering on about narcissists. I mean, when I say laughed, I'm not laughing at the effects of that, but it's like there's so much talk around it. But often you're going to find it's the narcissists themselves talking about this, right? Okay, so let's look at why the empath and the narcissist would attract each other. If there ever is a trauma bond, that would be that. I will bet you those two got together, and if you go back to their beginnings, they probably had similar patterns or histories in their childhood, right? Probably both abuse on some level, but the one has now become the perpetrator of the abuse, and the other one has continued on to become the victim. Now that I'm talking in an extreme way. Again, you got to take this and match it to your life, and from there, that's how the cycle continues until you've healed the trauma within yourself, because that's when your frequency shifts, that's when your energy changes, and that's when healing occurs of itself.
Yeah, and I would also like to say it's not always, you don't always get the bliss bit. So it's quite important for people to understand that when they're in a trauma bonded relationship, there's not always bliss. So sometimes you don't ever get to the bliss bit, because if you're a child and you can't get away, or you're an animal or you can't get away, or you've got kids and you've got nowhere else to go, you might not even have the bliss bit either. But you might feel so disempowered that there's no way that you can see to get out of it. And I think, as you said, you're right. You just got to. The thing is, it's like all the conversations we have. It's not about expecting the other person to change. That it's never about that. It's always about recognizing it yourself and saying, how can I change and get out of this situation? And
absolutely.
I'm saying you've caused it. Oh, no. I'm not saying that you've caused it. But so often we expect the other person to change. And most of the time, a lot of the time, they're not aware of what they're like. And even if they are aware, they normally haven't got the skills or the will necessarily to change. So when you're in this, it's so important to take that responsibility on yourself and say, okay, it's down to me. I'm going to have to be the one that gets out of this situation. Where can I get help from?
Absolutely. You know, Catherine, and I agree with you. It's not always bliss, and I agree that in different situations, it's going to be different things. But when we're looking at, let's say, abusive domestic relationship, and domestic violence is one of the greatest occurrences of trauma bonding, right? So your partner might be abusive, and then the next day, the love bombing. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean. And the promises and the kisses and the gifts and the what have you. And then 3 days later, a week later, a month later, whatever, that's when the cycle continues. And that is a deathly cycle when it comes to these types of things. This is oftentimes where people lose their lives. Women don't get out. And that's why I say it becomes the norm. And when you have enough of that type of abuse, that kind of breaking down of your psyche on a daily basis, subtly, before you know it, a year's gone by, you cannot even recognize the person that you probably were a year before, you know. But we also have to recognize, you know, when we look at energy, the way life works, and there's nothing new age about this, everyone, please. Everything in life is energy. You are energy. Everything is energy, right? And we are, your body's created from sound, frequency, and vibration. And every emotion, every thought, every action, reaction is stored within the cells of your body. Your ancestral lineage is stored within the cells of your body. So you have your own unique frequency. Like you have your unique fingerprint, you have your unique frequency. That's only yours. And you put it out. And that's the one thing that never lies. Now, if you are consistently attracting, because remember, like attracts like, right? So when you are consistently unhappy, miserable, worried, angry, aggressive, intolerant in your own thoughts, and this is where self-awareness comes in, you've got to realize, you know, telling yourself 10 times a day how ugly and fat you are is creating that. And then you wonder why your mother or your sister tells you you're fat and ugly. And then you want to freak out and kill them and feel like a victim. But all they're doing is mirroring what's happening in you. And that is the way that it is. So if you are consistently attracting abusers, deceivers, betrayers, manipulators, shenanigansers, gallivanters, the dodgiest of dodgy, right? And we constantly blaming somebody else. Then I invite you to ask yourself if you are the common denominator in your life. And if the answer to that is yes, you've already taken the first step to healing. Because then you can start seeing, well, okay, but you see what we then have a tendency to blame ourselves, don't we? Because, oh, well, it's my fault now. No, it's not your fault. It's part of your journey to grow and to learn. This is part of your growth, to realize when you are attracting, let's say, predominantly betrayal into your life, then I'm going to say to you, where have you betrayed you? Into thinking that this is the best that life has to offer you, the common denominator. Because if you are feeling full of anger and frustration and hard done by life, yet you put on your pretty face and your Gucci suit, I promise you, that's going to do nothing. Your energy flies through that, and you put those feelers out there for everyone who's vibing on the same vibe as you. This happens unconsciously. It's not conscious, okay? And suddenly you attract someone and they've had the same experience as you. You go, wow, I can't believe that's why. So now the same thing happens on an unpleasant level as well. So then you have to see, where have I betrayed me? I don't necessarily mean you're not running around cheating on everyone. Chances are you are. You know that. And if you are, this is your moment. These are the situations. These are the mirrors in your life that you are calling into your own life to make yourself accountable to yourself and God. So instead of shooting the messenger, The messenger being the ones that you hate or that are these terrible people in your life. They're just messengers for you. So instead of shooting the messenger, ask yourself what that person's teaching you. If you need healing within, and you the one that keeps healing the broken winged birds, and the next thing they turn out to be a great big monstrous eagle that just chows everything, eats everything, all your little eggs and plants and animals, and you go, I saved you and look what you did to me. Well, eagle's just being an eagle, right? So bottom line is we have to understand certain things about ourselves. And if you feel hard done by in life, then you've got to fill your own tank. You've then got to start doing things. And this is another thing that you get yourself out of these abusive cycles. Move your body, exercise, stretch, especially if you've been physically abused or kidnapped, because remember, your body is the thing that was involved. And that's the thing where at the time, especially as a little child, you would have felt most disempowered. So now, part of reclaiming your power is to feel yourself move your body. Do a handstand, do a headstand, stand on one leg. Feel the control that you get back in your body. It's very empowering, that, just in terms of that exercise, breathe, that sort of stuff. These are all little things that end up breaking the cycles of that abuse. I don't know, Catherine, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, a few things. Jojo was asking earlier on, can two people in a relationship with some of these qualities, can they work on it and heal from the trauma? Absolutely.
Yes.
So many people, in fact, there's so many examples of this, that sometimes those are the most amazing relationships when people do work through that. Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. But the thing is, what we have to realize with that is when you have been in a relationship, let's say there's been cheating or whatever has happened that might have broken your relationship down to its bare foundations. A lot of people, what they think is they want their old relationship back. They want what they had when they were 24 and gallivanting in the Caribbean seas, right? You're never going to get that back. So the first thing you have to realize is you got to drop everything, every expectation that you had in the past, and both of you, it will never work with only one. Both of you then work towards rebuilding a new relationship. So you still, the two of you, you've had all these experiences. What you did in the past didn't work. And remember, it always takes two to tango. It's never just one person that cheated on me. There's always two people involved. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, there's an involvement between the two of you. So yes, the one might be the transgressor, but maybe you were more passive in your aggressions. That, you know what I'm saying? There's accountability on both sides when anything like this happens. And it's never a blame. It's just a taking responsibility. That's all. Big difference between blaming myself and owning my shit. Big difference.
And not
so then,
what all of us have been through in the past, there's a stage in your life where you've got to keep on going back to what's happened in the past and decide what future you want to create. And it's so important, because we can all go back and sort of say, well, it's because of this, because of that, and it probably is, but that doesn't need to be part of your story moving forward. So only you know when you're ready to let go of that. And if you find yourself keep coming up with implications of why or how, there's different ways you can talk about it. It's not about forgetting your past, and it's not about not realizing that's an important part of you, but very much in terms of making sure you're making then a conscious decision of what you do and don't want to be part of your future moving forward.
Absolutely. The one thing I know is that if you're feeling in a situation where you wake up every morning and you feel sick, if you're constantly being lied to, If you constantly, and here again, and so often, especially in the young people today, I can't just say the young people, but it's most prevalent where I see it happening. Getting into these relationships, sleeping with a person on the first date. 3 months later, you're pregnant with a baby. I mean, if that's not trauma bonding, then I don't know what is, because again, that's a manifestation of trauma bonding. And again, this is coming from young girls not having had a good relationship with their father, or father that is absent. So now when they get to the age of being older, for example, any male attention or affection feels absolutely fabulous. But unfortunately, it's not the kind of attention that a father should be giving his daughter. It's all sexual. And that's why we're having so many teenage pregnancies, stuff like that, because these are young girls who are looking for security. And they will, sometimes men can treat them in the most disgusting, despicable ways. And they keep going back because they'll rather go back to what they know than to, because they, again, confidence here. And again, this is all coming from lack of confidence. If you don't have confidence in yourself as a person, that you can take care of your children or your child on your own, you can put a roof over your head, etc., buy food, etc., you are going to keep being drawn back to that abusive situation and make yourself smaller and try and appease the person you're with, because you think that it's your fault. Eventually you believe it's your fault. Eventually you believe the children crying is their fault, that dad's in a bad mood, for example. When we get to that place and our little box we're operating from is just that big, then, it's a dangerous time. So there's all sorts of little telltale signs for yourself. If you can see where you're at in your relationship, it doesn't necessarily only be with a partner, often with a parent. We know, especially with sexual abuse with children, Stockholm syndrome, and exactly like I explained earlier on, how they start with the little kids. I mean, why do you think so many of these abused kids in the system nowadays refuse to blow the whistle on their parents? They can't. It's still part of that trauma bonding. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think, with these things, I think just understanding that in all aspects of our lives, it's really healthy to objectively assess where you're at. And
Yes.
noticing, one of the other things that I think with when you know something's really off with any relationship you're in, is if you're trying to project a lot of blame outwards. So take the current situation on the world stage, let's take Trump shooting. When there's an external trauma, whatever, it doesn't matter what your views are on it, really doesn't matter at all. But when there's an external trigger, how do you react? How does it come out? Because those emotions can't come out if they're not already in you. And so therefore, if you're very reactive to things that are going on in the external environment, it's a really important clue to then sort of look in and say, okay, what is it? What is it that I don't feel in my own environment that I've got control over? Where is it that I feel stuck? Where do I feel vulnerable? Or being honest with yourself if you're the abuser, because we're all sitting here talking here as if we're not the ones ever doing the abuse. But when we've been in these situations as youngsters, we can be the ones doing the abuse as well. And that can be harder to deal with as well. So I think sometimes if you're not quite sure where you're at, looking at to how you're responding to external events that you're not directly involved in can be really good clue in terms of when those unaddressed issues need to be dealt with.
Simone is saying the thing is, even if it's bad, it feels familiar. It's not easy to step out of that cycle. It's totally not. I totally get that. And that is why I think before people get into deep, it's good to recognize the signs. But I know we as human beings are generally creatures of habit. for some reason, we wait until the bitter end, until there's no other choice. In many instances, I mean, in my journey as a healer, I'll tell you something. I'm going to probably say 99.9% of the time that people have come to see me, it's been because of a trauma. Something has happened or something like that. So it's like something has shaken their world or their foundation, and they need to change, or they need to feel better or heal, or whatever the case might be. You know, if we were just aware how these things worked, you know, and we saw it in ourselves, we were able to recognize it in each other and be gentle with the other person. Because especially in this day and age, you know, Catherine, we work on these platforms nowadays where there's the amount of SRA that has been occurring, and not just SRA, but abuse, right? Is it's every third person, literally, that's been through that, and they've hidden it. They've been tortured. They've been threatened to not speak. And anyone knows, any silence or secrets in a dark room, it becomes miffy and moldy and slimy and sludgy. And that's the stuff that causes illness. If you open up the door, bring in the light, clear it out and say, this is what's in there, take it out, let the sun dry it out, wash it, whatever you need to do with it, right? That's when things heal, not when we keep them on the inside. So we have to speak to people as well. Go for therapy, you know, and you know, if this is happening with you, your partner should never be demeaning you, undermining you, telling you you're a piece of crap, beating up on you in any way. And if you are caught in any such cycle, no matter how small or insignificant you might think it is, I would really invite you to just take a moment and consider where you're at. There are people around you that can help. It's time, you know, that we all, it's always been time. But it's not like now's the only time, but I think we've all evolved to the point that the majority of us understand this level of consciousness now. So we are, and the majority of us, well, wouldn't say, I mean, not the normies, but many of us understand SRA as well. You know, so we can see a little bit deeper than what we did a year or two ago, right?
I love it. Yeah, I love the comments in the chat, and I love that, Jojo. And so I had to look at my own actions, and I think this is the other thing is I've had two similar on the same subject, but a lot of similarities conversations today, and I think we've got to find it in our hearts to let people change, and that's ourselves and others. And when we're discussing all this, when we're all being really open to people, I mean, so many people can change. They really can, if they're given the right environment to change and the right support to change. And, you know, some of our biggest whistleblowers have been people that have been involved in terrible situations. And sometimes, you know, everyone's journey is different, and it's not our job to really, you know, decide what route through life different individuals should take. It's right. Enough taking responsibility for our own direction through life. So I think whether it's you, whether it's a loved one, whatever stages, you know, I've seen loads of comments in the audience about what's happened in people's lives and everything. Even I would say, even when you've cut off people in your own life, it's always good to revisit whether that's still what you want, and whether, because you will be a different person from that space, they might be a different place. And that's not about letting your boundaries drop. It's not at all that. And the decision, if you reassess, you might say, yes, I'm still happy with that decision. I'm still going to cut that person out of my life. Or you might sort of say, well, I've got different skills now. Let me see. They might have different skills. They might not. But what I was saying, the point I'm trying to make is sometimes I think as humans, we're so set on, I've made this decision, particularly when it comes to parents, for example, they're wrong. I'm right. I went through trauma as a child. It was their fault. That might all be right. But then
exactly.
Look at the situation and see if there's some sort of healing there, because I know a lot of people recently on a personal level that have lost their parents without ever making up. And it might not be the right thing for you to make it up. There's no one size fits all for this, but just ask the question, because there's nothing worse than when that opportunity is being taken away from you and you thinking, oh, I wish I had just had that final conversation. I wish I had. So
absolutely,
when you things, whether it's with an ex, whether it's a parent, whether it's yourself, whether it's with a child, don't ever think these decisions have to be final. They might be, but they might not.
I agree. Jojo, you just something I'm noticing in the comments here. I'll ask myself why I felt the need to manipulate a situation, for instance. Well, and that's a very good question, because most of us are manipulative. We are on some level or the other. And the only reason why we manipulate is because we are afraid that we are not going to get what we want by being truthful. It's that simple. Think about manipulation. It's the opposite of truth. So manipulation is anything from lying to cheating to stealing to whatever, adding little tails onto the story, twisting the tail, whatever. But either way, it's coming from a vibration that is not of your truth. In other words, it's coming from fear. Now, the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real. In other words, fear is not real, but it sure as hell feels freaking real. So if you feel like you need to manipulate situations to get what you want, I will guarantee you it's going to catch up with you. You are going to attract, and remember, like attracts like, every manipulator on the block, every cheater on the block, and probably the bigger shark than you as well, because that's how it works. And then you can't understand why everyone's a manipulative. So you think, well, because everyone else is manipulative, you've got to manipulate too. And everyone else thinks that. So we live in a world of freaking manipulation. At some point, we've got to stand up and say, I choose truth. Let me tell the truth. Let me see what it feels like not to lie. But in order to not to lie to others, I have to stop lying to myself. That's the first person I have to honor with the truth, is myself. And honesty is the highest form of love. So when you are being truthful with yourself, it's a declaration of self-love. And there you go.
Strength. It's such a strength. You know, we can't spout all these spiritual teachings like we learn through our mistakes. We do things like this if we don't really mean it. And we do. And I can't imagine there's one of us on this chat, because I don't know that Jesus is present, but in all seriousness, I don't think there's anyone here that can't look there and sort of say there's not something they regret. And it's not about focusing on that, but I think I'm seeing on the public stage, you know, the anger, the aggression, the inability, the blame, the, you know, expecting to hold other people to standards that we can't hold for ourselves in our own life. And it's always a reflection, you know, the biggest stage is always a reflection of our internal worlds to some degree for different times at different stages. But I think, you know, having that ability to self-reflect is so brilliant. You know, it's
the only way, Catherine. It's the only way.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for people who think medication, and whether it's over-the-counter medication or street drugs or whatever, you know, is the way. It truly is not. You know, we are in the time now. And I mean, if you've listened to our last show on humans in turmoil, you know, how do we reach self-mastery? It's not about levitating and flying around in the clouds, not at all. Self-mastery is really the point we get where we get to the point and realize, I don't need to carry this anymore. You drop your karma. You understand you've achieved what you've needed to achieve. You stop punishing yourself. You are able to find yourself standing still in the midst of a storm. You've got that centered connection. It doesn't make it always easy. And the greatest master that walked this planet understood that perfection doesn't always feel good, right? Or nothing that is good always feels good. It's not a comfortable, blissfully feeling, but it's an expression of growth. Look at the lobster. The lobster has to shed its skin and break its skin to grow. That's pretty much like we have to do as well. So sometimes growth is a little bit uncomfortable, but if change comes knocking at your door, it means that this is the perfect time to do it. And if you work in sync with that time and not put 10 million barrels of fear in front of you about how am I going to do this, when, if change is saying you've got to get out of your apartment today, sorry, and you go, okay, thank you, God, please show me my next apartment, and you truly believe your next apartment is there, trust me, you'll get a call from someone saying, are you looking for an apartment? It's that what happens, but you've got to trust the process. Change is never easy for a lot of people. Most people don't like change. And so they'll stay in these shitty, uncomfortable situations because they fear, A, not being able to take care of themselves, B, being alone, and what the future holds.
Yeah. And you know, we can be those safe places for ourselves first and then for others. You know,
You have to be there, yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's interesting. And I think being careful what we look out for, you know, if we're looking for narcissists everywhere, we'll see narcissists everywhere, but that doesn't mean we don't educate ourselves. I suppose the way I look at it is it's like, I don't believe, I'm just going to bring it back to the animals because I find those examples easier. So I don't believe in using heavy medications for worming, for fleas, for jabs. I'll be careful on the words I use. But if you've got a dog, you should understand what the symptoms of heartworm are. You should understand what lungworm looks like. So you don't pump poisons into your dog or cat every month to avoid heartworm or lungworm because your vet's told you to. But you're aware enough of what to look out for. So should your animals display those results, then you can look at what you want to do about it. So if that makes sense, what I'm sort of saying for some of the things like when you were saying about Nancy saying narcissism's an all-time high, I think it's really, really important to understand what narcissism is and what trauma bonding is and things like that, so that you can spot the signs earlier before you get too deep in it. I only found out what narcissism is when I employed someone who's the biggest narcissist ever. And I only knew the term because she kept saying it was her boyfriend that was a narcissist. And so I can laugh about it now. So yeah, having enough information to be aware without having too much obsession on it is an interesting mix for all of us, I feel.
But I think we've also got to be careful to label these things. And on the topic of narcissism, I have an interesting theory here for you guys. And I know my theories aren't always initially met with smiles and happiness. They're like, what the hell is she talking about? But trust me, if you start trying out these theories and you stick with it, it'll change your life for sure. So let's think about the narcissist and the empath. Why does the narcissist and the empath always attract each other? We're always hearing about these stories. And I sit back and I watch and I eat my popcorn and I see all these posts flying up and these vlogs and blogs and these narcissist empath wars going on. And it's very simple. Now remember, we live, your body is energy. Whatever experiences you've had in your life and all your lives before are contained within your frequency. They're contained within every cell of your body, right? And that creates a frequency that bzzz, and like a magnet, you have an invisible energy field that surrounds you, but it is coming from within you. It's not something that just surrounds you, right? That's known as your aura, your energy field, okay? And by the way, your energy field, your aura, is actually your 8th chakra. So it's the culmination of all 7 chakras expressed in your force field around you. That's your 8th chakra, by the way. Bet you didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so when you look at that, and then you can understand, for example, your energy is who you are. So if you are a narcissist towards yourself. Now let's think about what a narcissist does. Breaks you down, lies to you, belittles you, doesn't keep appointments, breaks commitments, whatever. All of these things gaslights you into believing you're going to do something and then you whatever. I mean, let's take that back to yourself. If you had to listen to your own thoughts every day for just 20 minutes, nonstop, oh boy, I bet you're going to hear the most narcissistic thoughts churning around in your own head. How often do you promise yourself you're going to start gym or take a holiday or go on a cruise or make more money or whatever, or change your job? And you just don't. You just continue on. How many times do you promise yourself you're going to gym and you're going to, or yoga or whatever it is you do, and you just say, no, tomorrow. You keep breaking commitments with yourself. How many times when you say, I'm going to eat better, and yet you go and munch on 4 chocolates again? You keep breaking commitments and you keep not honoring promises to yourself. How many times do you say yes when you should be saying no? And every time you say yes and you should be saying no, it's like swallowing poison. And that poison sits in different parts of your body. And remember, everything is energy. How many times do you tell yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror how ugly or wrinkly or wobbly your bum is, or how droopy your boobs are, or whatever? I don't know. I mean, rest assured, I have heard the craziest there. How many times? So my question to you then would be, if you think about that, would you not agree that you are being the biggest narcissist towards yourself? And when you can realize that, you see, that's where self-worth begins. And then suddenly, now when you become wiser, you realize people aren't doing things to you. They are being something for you. So now instead of this narcissist was doing all this terrible stuff to me, now I change my narrative and say, wow, he was being a mirror for me, showing me my own thought process towards myself, showing me my own behavior towards myself, showing me my own abuse towards myself. I'm the common denominator in my life. So now that I know this, I can start changing the way I am towards me. Now let me make commitments to myself and keep them. Let me look at myself in the mirror and say, you're cool. Let me start looking at the good things that have happened in my life. Let me start being grateful for that which I have. That's how you start shifting your frequency. And that's how you start becoming more confident. That's how your health improves. That's how all these things start changing. And then you realize what a gift the narcissist has been to you. Because all he was doing was really showing you who you are towards yourself. That's when I say they are a gift. Doesn't mean that what they did was right. Doesn't mean you deserved what they did. But it means you created that situation in your life because you did. You always create the situations in your life to show you something. And if you're not seeing the good in something yet, then you need to ask yourself. It's like I always ask God, what am I not seeing? Show me what I'm not seeing. And show me what I need to see. And you'll get it. So when we all start that's soul alchemy. That's what I do. That's the work I do. That's so new age, by the way. It's self-realization.
I've never understood what new age really means. I mean, it's a bit, to me, it's like a conspiracy. To me, it's no different than conspiracy theorists. You know, people throw these things around as if they're meant to be insults. And it's like, well, it depends. It just makes me laugh, really. I'm so not a labels person.
Exactly.
People that call someone new age or say what you're doing is new age. If you ask them to sort of, I say this all the time when people call me anti-vax. I say, well, what do you mean by anti-vax? And then I'll tell you whether I comply to your definition of it.
Exactly.
You know, it's making me laugh so much. I'm just bringing it back to the Trump thing, and everyone's sort of saying, "Oh, it was all set up." Well, there's a million ways it could be set up. What do you mean by set up? And this is where these miscommunications happening. And I've spent a lot of time this week just laughing at the madness of it all, and thank God for guinea pigs.
Exactly. Your little guinea pigs. How are they doing?
Oh, they're amazing. They are so amazing, these guinea pigs. I can't tell you. In between, I wish I could show you all around my office, but my office is down my garden. So I've got like the ponies there, the guinea pigs there, cats are wherever they want to be, rabbits are there. And every time I go out to sort of in between, like I'll do it now, I go and pick some more grass for them and they come running over squeaking and I can tickle them under their chins and they're amazing. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, they're not worried about anything. I can say they're not moaning about the weather, they're not moaning about the chemtrails, they're just quite happy with their
just doing their thing. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I just love these lives because I love seeing the interactions, the comments, and it really gives me a lot of hope for humanity. It really does, actually.
Absolutely. And I wanted to say, Charmaine, I've been just reading your comments as well, and well done for getting out of that situation. You know, what's amazing is when we start moving things, we realize even if we've been separated from someone for 8 years and never divorced them, you must remember those ties are energetically still there. That contract in place is still an energetic tie. So when you choose to get your divorce or sell your house, whatever it is, you then release those ties and then you're able to move on in your life. So it's a beautiful thing when we start making headway in our lives, start just making the little changes. And yeah, I really enjoyed having you guys in the chats. So thank you. And for those of you, unfortunately, I'm just keeping Caleb on a low, what do you call it? Low rise at the moment. Yeah, he's just going through some stuff, so I'll let you guys know when he's up and about again. So please don't give up. He's definitely around still, but just needs some prayers. And I know you guys are brilliant at giving that to him, so thank you so much. But we won't be seeing him later on this evening. Thank you, everybody. God bless you all. And thank you so much for watching us. And if you can't be good at it. Goodbye.
Yeah. All right.